everyone, welcome to another Random Talk Sunday, and today I thought it would be interesting to actually do a review of a film. And this one is a rather unique category because usually I don't review films that have come out fairly recently. I usually review films that are kind of either a little bit old or ancient, I guess you could say. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of discuss a film that I have already seen and kind of bring you to light on my thoughts in regards to that film. For this week, it's going to be Jurassic Park. I'm thinking of probably doing a review for the Mad Max movie too. But I want to kind of review some films that have come out fairly recently because I think it would be nice to kind of give you my thoughts in regards to those films since, it shouldn't always be about the older ones, obviously. And I do try to find films that are relatively new. But as far as films that have just come out in theaters, that's usually what I don't focus on my channel. So I kind of want to bring that sort of to light. But yeah, without further ado, let me discuss Jurassic World. There are a lot of people, at least from the critics that I've seen or that I follow, that seem to really dislike this movie for some reason. And when I look into the criticisms of it, I almost feel like that. I mean, it's almost like they were expecting something like out of Spielberg. And this is obviously not what this movie is, because clearly there was a different director and tons of different people behind it. And this film obviously does have flaws, and I'm not going to say it is a phantasmic, product. I mean, if you enjoy, if you enjoy the kind of blockbustery kind of, and you just want to kind of just enjoy yourself and you don't want to go in with all these expectations and things like that, which is basically what I did when I went into this movie. I set the bar pretty low because I thought, you know what, there's definitely going to be a different director behind this, and there's definitely going to be a different scenario, and there's a lot that's going to be CG because that's really the direction that a lot of Hollywood is going, so I'm not going to complain about that. All I kind of cared about was whether or not there was going to be at least some interesting characters, which I think there actually are within this film, and whether or not there was going to be a somewhat plausible plot. Because, I mean, as far as the Jurassic sort of universe is concerned, I mean, it is definitely not necessarily up to par, I would say, with the original. And again, I'm not going to be putting this film in the classic category at any time soon. But I will say it was a step up from the sequels, at least in my opinion. I felt like it was a better product. At least I felt it was trying, unlike this other sequels where I felt like they were just kind of just there for sort of a to try to push for more scenarios that were already sort of present within the first film, but this film kind of tries to take an interesting turn with it, and I'll kind of explain my reasoning as far as that goes when I sort of go into what this film is about. But in case you are unaware, there is a series of films called Jurassic Park, and there were 3 of them, but this one is called Jurassic World. And this is technically a 4th installment, and it is technically a sequel because it's taking place in a very modern era. And that's one thing that I think this film actually nailed down pretty good. I mean, it made it feel like it was part of the 21st century. I mean, there were people there were people that had smartphones, there was all of this. There was like hologram technology. There was all of these massive screens. It really did feel like it was updated. Unlike the other films where you look at them and you go, wow, I feel old. Like, even when I look at these films that came out so many eons ago, I'm like, wow, I feel old. That technology just looks so, it just looks so outdated. But here it is up to date. Kids are on their phones. Um, you do feel like they knew what they were doing as far as um, technology was concerned, and trying to update it and make it feel like it was to make it feel like you were within the present era. Also, I think another thing that this film actually did a really good job of was establishing the park. Um, within the first Jurassic Park, I felt like the whole grandiose plan um, that um, that the basically the park owner was trying to create wasn't really fully explored or realized. Like, you never really felt like that there was a created world. It just you just saw sections of it. You didn't really see the whole thing, and you didn't really feel like that this was, you felt like there was a lot of testing still. Like, they were really testing this thing out. And it didn't feel like it was even a fully fledged out park yet. Even though, again, that film was again focusing on the fact that um, that it wasn't really fully fleshed out yet. But at the same time, you almost feel like if you're going to ultimately present something to the world, you would have it fully prepared, and kind of showcased before you show everybody else or the people that you want to ultimately impress and have approval of for the park. You'd think that you would have everything ready, and you'd be like, this is my vision. Experts come in and see if this is gonna work. And I felt like the first film and also the sequels didn't really capture that vision as well. Whereas within this film, they show you like how the park functions, like in such great detail too. Like, they show you how that whole uh portion of the park where they have that um sort of deep sea creature. They show you how that portion looks like, and you're like, that's how a park looks like. That's how SeaWorld kind of looks like. You felt like that um there was a genuine established park, like that there was something there. And was there a lot of CGI within it? Yes. And again, that does bother me, and that is a problem, I think, with this film. And I knew it was going to be a problem because I know that a lot of films are doing this nowadays. And that's why I miss the whole charm and thing from Spielberg. But obviously, this isn't Spielberg, so you're not going to get a Spielberg film if it's not from Spielberg. So basically, that's another thing that I really enjoyed, was the fact that they actually showed you the park. Was there a lot of CG? Yes. But at the same time, there was a visual, creative understanding behind the park. And you felt that there was a lot of people behind this park and a lot of security measures and all that stuff. Obviously, there's a little bit of problems that end up arising, obviously, when they try to create this new dinosaur, which is really where the plot comes in and where we end up being sort of introduced to our characters. You got a female corporate lady, and then you've got, I believe his name is Chris Pratt, if I'm not mistaken. But his character is the most enjoyable by far. He is the awesome alpha dog who is basically he's like he's like a trainer for these raptors, and he kind of controls them, um, and he sort of uses like sort of this it's almost like a sound recognition or something like that, like using like a clicker to kind of control them. And his character is, I think, actually fairly interesting. He's very self-confident in himself. He is very knowledgeable about these creatures and even the park itself. He was initially part of the Navy, you know. Swoon Chris Pratt. But he was great. Like, he was enjoyable to watch. He had some funny moments, and he was the one that you really ultimately wanted to root for because he was actually, I think, the most likable. Um, the corporate lady, you know, the redhead in the trailers, she at first was a little bit uptight, but I think over time she kind of became more likable. Like, she realized how much she messed up. And you will see how she really messes up within this movie. um and you know, she kind of tries to make decisions when she doesn't really know what she's doing. So yeah, you'll see all of that basically happen. and though overall I think that again, um despite the fact that the corporate lady um, and Chris Pratt, I'm so sorry. I am so bad with these character names. I usually sometimes only remember them by their actors. All I know is that the lady with the red hair was I think Moneypenny in one of the recent um, James Bond movies, but as far as their names are concerned, I can't remember. um, but definitely Chris Pratt's character, and I believe that's his full name, if I'm not mistaken, uh, was probably the best character. And I was at least going in thinking, okay, there at least has to be that one good character. Please let that be him. And it was him, and I was impressed, and I was happy with that. I was just happy that they at least had some competent guy in there. So that was good. And not only is there a problem with sort of the CGI, but obviously there is a little bit of incompetence as far as the plot is concerned when they create this new genetically engineered super dino monster. And he's technically a raptor monster, um, but I mean, you could argue that there were inconsistencies even within the first film, um, where they made all the dinosaurs female, but then they put in some DNA of a frog that can change its gender. Why would they do that? Because, you know, I mean, then that's going to mean the dinosaurs are going to change gender. You know, that kind of inconsistency I think also exists within this film. Like, there's one point where they didn't tell the owner of the park about what exactly kind of monster they were creating. But obviously science is a complicated process, so they were, and I think they were still in the process of really testing this thing out. And obviously the people were, you know, the corporate lady even brings this up, how, you know, people want something more. They always want something else. They always want the new monster or something, you know, to keep them coming to the park. And so, you know, I think it would only make sense that they would be pushed off to the edge, and become desperate to increase their bottom line. I mean, that's obvious. I think that's somewhat understandable. Now, as to the way they go about it, yes, what they did was really stupid, but at the same time, despite that, you know, I think it is somewhat I think sometimes people can be pushed too far, and then they don't end up thinking things through, and um, ultimately things become chaos, which is what ultimately happens within this film. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think I think what's interesting too is that this film kind of knows that it's kind of playing itself off as a joke, because we've sort of seen a similar circumstance within even the first film. It's like, you know, they're dinosaurs. How are you going to be able to manage dinosaurs? and they kind of show you how they manage them within this film, but then you go, how can you manage this crazy, gigantic, super monster? Like that's just insane. Um, so there is a little bit of a plot problem. Um, and that's where I personally didn't feel like it was that big of an issue, because at the end of the day, you get this similar kind of inconsistency within the first film, and then it obviously carries over into the second and third. But at least within this film, there were at least some competent characters. And, at the end of the day, even though things got completely and overly chaotic, at least there was some means to try to stop what ultimately was occurring. Um, Even though there was a lot of failure that ends up happening as a result of this monster. But yeah, that's really, I think, definitely a big issue that some people could have with this film, just by the fact that, there is just a ridiculousness to it, and there is, this kind of overblown nature to it that, you kind of have to accept going in, knowing the knowing the previous films. But that didn't really bother me as much, because again, I knew that there were these little things that they were the same problems, basically, that occurred within the previous films. So that didn't disappoint me all too much. I did enjoy the ending too, as well. I thought the ending um, was a lot of fun, and was there a little bit of fan service here and there? Yeah, but I think at the same time they were trying to sort of pay homage to what the original film was trying to do. Um, Even if, again, some people didn't enjoy this film for whatever reason. But even at the end, people within the theater that I was in, they gave a standing ovation for it. So yeah, I don't know what to tell all the people who really, really despise this film. But basically, the thing that this film does really good of, actually, I think, is really upping the sort of suspense, and you really don't know ultimately what they are going to try to do, um, to try to defeat the monster, and I think that's really what makes the film actually rather interesting. Um, Whereas within a lot of the sequels, there was just a lot of um, like crazy, unlikable, uninteresting characters to carry any weight through, and there was just nothing within the plot that sembled the kind of, um, it didn't represent anything that was creative, really, and kind of magical, about the first film. And although this film doesn't technically achieve that amount of magic and awe, it at least tried to, uh, kind of give a little bit of a full circle by bringing back to what the original film was trying to do. It doesn't succeed, obviously, on all levels, but I think it was pushing itself in sort of the right direction. Um, so I think that ultimately is what makes it, also rather enjoyable. And I think if you can just go in knowing that it is designed to just be this very entertaining kind of, monster, well, really, entertaining monster slash dinosaur movie, then I think you will find yourself to be enjoyed. And I think Chris Pratt's character carries the film a lot, um, along with the, corporate lady. And I'm just gonna call her corporate lady because that's how she's pretty much represented throughout the entire film. But uh, there's still character that comes out of her too. So I think overall those small changes of at least adding in some uh, somewhat competent characters made it seem like it was stepping itself up from what I think people have seen previously within the other sequels. I mean, I thought it was enjoyable overall. Is it perfect? No. Is it close to what the first film was? No. I'm not saying it's a classic. But it was entertaining for me. And I really enjoyed the ending. There was some interesting and fun humor in it. There was some genuinely tense moments. I kind of liked how the corporate lady's character sort of um, she ultimately sort of realizes what she was doing, or what she was doing was really wrong. And I kind of like how you get that sort of, you see that change sort of within her occur within the film, where she realizes, these are animals. It's not just, they're not just a number. Um, so seeing it through that perspective, I think, and having that perspective changed, was a really interesting way of conveying things, and I think really worked for a character like hers. So yeah, I think ultimately, that's all I can really say when it comes to this film, actually. But it was a fun ride. I mean, if you just go in not expecting Spielberg, I think you'll be fine. But if I think you're expecting, Spielberg, if you're expecting that kind of level of kind of endearment, you're probably not going to find it within this film. Um, is it? Does it have its dumb moments? Yes, it does. Does it have its um, crazy, um, plot points that maybe don't ultimately amount to making as much sense? Yes, but we also have those plot points that existed within the first film too. So I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to whether or not it just comes down to what you expect. And obviously, I didn't appreciate the fact that they overused CGI. I didn't like the fact that there were some plot points that um, don't ultimately make sense or amount to much. But overall, I think it was an enjoyable return to sort of form as far as for a Jurassic Park film is concerned. I really hope that this is the end of the road as far as Jurassic Park is concerned, because I don't know what else they could possibly make out of this film, or out of this film series, really, when it comes to establishing another kind of new story or plot point, really. Unless it would be the aftermath of the disaster that ends up occurring within this film, which, again, probably doesn't really amount to much, since pretty much at that point, I'm sure the military would come in and just nuke or something. But yeah, I think that's really ultimately, though, all I can say about this film without really giving too much away. I thought it was enjoyable. I know there's going to be people who disagree with me on this and think it's whatever, but I honestly found some enjoyment out of this, and the sequels didn't provide me that level of enjoyment, but this film succeeded. But yeah, I think that's, though, ultimately everything that I can bring up. But again, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.